Okay, perfect. All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Elbows Tight Podcast. It's your host, Travis. Today I have a very special guest in Jeferson. How do you say your last name? I don't want to say it wrong.
Guaresi.
Guaresi, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
You got
yeah.
right.
First try. How you doing today, Jefferson?
I'm doing amazing, man. Life is good.
Good, good. Hey, this got set up by a good close friend, Riley. I'm super happy to have you on the podcast today, man. Talk about like your journey through Jiu Jitsu and then how you've kind of switched over to coaching and stuff like that. But I was researching you a little bit, and it looks like you started Jiu Jitsu down in Brazil around 10, 11 years old. Am I correct?
Yes, yeah, that's
so.
correct.
What was that like starting jiu-jitsu at such a young age in Brazil? You mentioned that you were out in the rural area. You didn't have very much around you. Jiu-jitsu was like very what's the word I'm looking for? It's like there wasn't much there for you in jiu-jitsu aspects. Like, what was it like when you first started jiu-jitsu?
First, just to initiate, I want to thank you, Travis. Thank you to Riley to connect us. And yeah, so when I started, my first professor was Coach Rafael Godoy. He was a guy that he just loved jiu-jitsu, and he decided to teach a little bit in a small gym there in my city. My city is very, very small, and nobody like used to know what jiu-jitsu was. Like even myself, I used to be like a soccer player. I love until even these days I love to watch soccer. I watch more soccer than jiu-jitsu. But I used to play soccer, and a few friends of mine invite me in school. They were like, "Hey, let's check it out, jiu-jitsu." I was like, that fighting sounds like a little gay, hugging each other. But that's how, like, I'm from countryside, and the idea of like people hugging each other, fighting, I don't know that thing. It was funny at first, but as soon as I started, because of my athletic background in soccer, I started in soccer very young, so I kind of did really well, especially in the first year. My professor, he was really passionate about it. Like he loves to teach. Even in these days, he still coach a little bit, and he's just like introduced me into it. And his first year, he started putting me to compete in like Brazilian nationals, and I started traveling when I was like 10, 11 years old. I was like, oh, wait a minute, like I have been playing soccer for a while and nothing has gone like happened, and now I'm like competing, winning like national titles. Like I was young, but it still was like a lot for me. And where I came from, Brazil, is like I don't know, I'm not gonna compare to any state, but it's very like away from everything. Like there's not much. And the first airplane that I took, it was because of jiu-jitsu. So for me, it was a big change in my life. So that opens my eye for the whole opportunity.
Yeah, and you felt like you kind of like met the ceiling cap in Brazil for your jiu-jitsu skill, right? And that's what ultimately led you to New York, correct?
Yeah, so for me, it was the first time is like, oh, okay, going from Rondônia, which is the state I was born, from Rondônia to São Paulo. That's a huge jump.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like I remember the first Brazilian nationals was in Rio. So we went to Rio. I won the first time. I won the second time. And we had a third time where it was in São Paulo. So I was traveling a lot already. And when I went to São Paulo, I went like kind of 2 times. And my professor told me, hey, look, you don't do really well in school. I know you don't have a plan set up. And you do really well with sports, but you have to decide. You're getting to an age. I was a little bit older. I was like 15. He was like, you're getting to an age where you're going to have to start planning your future. You know, you have to decide what you want of life. And I was like, yeah, that's true, but I don't know what I want. I was kind of bored of jiu-jitsu because I got to a level in my state where I won like 2 Brazilian nationals. I got a second place one time, and I won like South American like championships. And I was like, kind of get boring, you know, that age where you start becoming a little older and you have to decide what you want. And I was like, I don't know what to do. So he's like, look, let's go to this tournament in São Paulo. I think it was like a São Paulo Open. And you go, you compete, and we go visit a few gyms. And I remember that at that time, Cicero Costa is start popping like with Miao's brother, with Leandro Lo, and we decided to go there. I went there. I saw Leandro. I saw the Miaos. I saw Thiago Bastos, and I saw a few other guys. I was like, wow, like this room is full of monsters here. And then I did a training session. I got tapped. I did like 4 rounds. I got tapped like 100 times. And I was like, this is the place. I don't need to go anywhere else. Like, and then that's when I decided to move to Sao Paulo. It was like quick decision. I went back, talked to my mom, and like, look, I'm gonna go to Sao Paulo. My professor Rafael gonna help me out at the beginning to figure things out. I just needed a short amount of money to live there. They used to have this location. It's a house where 2 rooms, 1 bathroom, 1 kitchen for 18 guys.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I lived there for a bit. We used to call the Tough of Brazil, like the now in the name. Yeah, so that's where everything started when I moved from Rondônia to São Paulo. And after a year and a half there, I got the connections with Miaos, a few other good friends, Italo, Jonas, and Thaleson Soares, and Diego Pato. He came a little, like we all came about the same time, but they came first. And they're like, oh, look, we're training with Murilo. I didn't even know who Murilo was. And I was like, who's this Murilo Santana? And then I started researching about him. Oh, I just saw he's a beast. He beat up everyone in training. I was like, well, the Miaos are training there. I might go too.
So what was it like, the conversation with your mom? Because that could be, as a parent, I have a 16-year-old, right? So you were about his age when you made this decision. Like, what was the conversation like with your mom when you're like, hey, I want to do this. I need to go all in on this. Professor believes in me. Like, what was that whole experience?
At first, when I told her, she was like, hey, you kidding? You don't know what you're doing. Like, she didn't take me serious, but she always supported me 100% on everything that I wanted to do. So that's thanks to my mom. She was great supporter. But she was like, I don't know about it. But then my coach Rafael went there and talked to her. Is look, I know what I'm doing. He probably didn't know, but
looking back at it now.
Yeah. But definitely he was a big supporter. He talked to her, and he always make sure he always checked on me and to make sure everything was going well. But he played a big role, and because I had traveled with him a lot, and he was like kind of a father figure for me, because everything I would do throughout my day, I would hang out with him and train at night with him. So my mom trusts him a lot, and he did a good job. He coached me really well through. He always told me, hey, look, it's not going to be easy, but you need to connect with the right people. Go train with those guys. They're the best right now. Do your thing. And eventually, whenever you have opportunity, go fight at Worlds and all of that. So that opens my mind a lot.
18 people in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. What is that like? Like, is there, I could imagine young men pumping full of testosterone, fighting all the time. Yeah. There must have been some craziness that happened in such a small space.
Well, happened a few stuffs happened. Definitely, like, people would fight for, who's gonna clean the like dishes, and people would be very disorganized, and we have to organize this place and all of that. And people from 16 years old to 30 years old, so a big gap in ages. But that was, I would say, tough moments, but that made me also learn a lot about human behaviors and I would say community also, right? Because even though it was a whole mess, all different type of people, we kind of, for the people, the time I was there, we kind of tried to do the best of like, hey guys, let's do the best we can here to live together, even though on the mats we would beat up each other. Sometimes you get beat up, but But we lived. I would say that it was good for me to like. Oh, I was 16 and I had to leave that. That made me become 25 right away. Like, like I was 25 right there, just from living with those people. I had really good friends of mine. Like, I live with. I don't know if you know, like Jonas Andrade, Thaleson Soares, Diego Pato, some who else? Iago George, like a bunch of other guys that we would eat, sleep, and live jiu-jitsu. That's everything we would do. And with other crazy stuff, we would fight a lot about, like, not physically, but we argue a lot about
Right.
dishes and cleaning and all of that, but never had anything physical, like getting involved in fights, because we would be tired. Like, we would train a lot. We would train 5 hours a day.
Yeah, I think Flow Grappling actually followed Andre Galvão down, and he had a house similar to that situation where he had a bunch of Brazilian practitioners down living, trying to make it full time and whatnot. And I think it really shows that when you dedicate your life to it, like, if you go all in and you have the right people around you, you can accomplish amazing things. Like, from a rural area, like you said, where there wasn't much around you, to Sao Paulo, where you're living in this house with 18 other guys. And then you move to New York, which I'm sure was a huge culture shock coming from Brazil. And then, I mean, New York of all places, I'm sure that was an experience. What was it like, touching down in New York, that first experience of, I'm sure now, being here for a couple of years, New Yorkers are very brass. Like, they mean well, but they don't come off the nicest all the time.
Yeah. So New York City is similar to São Paulo.
Okay.
Right? São Paulo is like that too. São Paulo city is like huge city. People, get out of my way. I gotta go get to work. Don't talk to me. I have no time. But it was at the beginning, I had no idea. Like, to start, the way I ended up in New York City was like, it wasn't arranged at all. Like,
oh, okay.
Before, we were planning a trip to go to Europeans in Lisbon, Portugal, and we got scammed with a few tickets. There was this guy show up selling a bunch of airplane tickets for everyone, doing like travel package and all of that. And me and a few other friends, we got into this thing. It was like, let's buy it. If we can travel one time, it still pays for the price. It's kind of cheap. And we bought this package. We never got this ticket. Oh. And we got left out with no money. And we were like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? Like, how are we going to travel to Lisbon? We need to do this Europeans. And right after that would be like 2 months or 3 months later would be the PANs. And we were planning that. And we decided that we had no money left. And a few friends from California, they helped us out creating a few GoFund us, right? So they helped us out with that. And we were able to raise a good amount of money with that. So they were like, oh, Jonas, I remember Jonas invited me. He was like, look, we're going to go to Lisbon. And then from there, we're going to do a camp at Unity. And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. If I can go, we stay at the gym and we make it happen. But then I didn't know Murilo. So the thing was, we had to talk to Murilo. And I tried to reach him out, but he didn't answer. It was back and forth. Jonas talked to him. Hey, can this guy come here? He's like, he didn't answer. And he was like this whole, like, I was like a little bit, not drama, but I was like, oh my God, should I go? Should I not go? And I decided to come without, like, Jonas just told him, like, Murilo, like, hey, Murilo, there's this guy coming in. He asked a few guys, oh, he's trustable. And they're like, oh yeah, no, he's a good guy. And then I came, and I remember the first time I opened those doors, the room, Unity, an old place, it was a small room. When they would train, it was winter time. They would train, and that room, you would open the door, it would come the steam out of it.
Oh man.
I was like, ooh, this is what I want. I was like, okay, all right. I'm here. I have no way and no other place to go. My tickets is my flight back is just in a few months, so I have to stay. And then that's where everything started. When I first got to US, it was from Lisbon, Europeans to here, and that's where the whole journey started.
So when you first came to America, you're like, all right, Unity's the place I want to train. Was there any like cultural differences on the mats from coming from Brazil and then training in America? Like, is there any like political stuff like on the mats, like that you were like, oh, this is different than where I'm from, but okay, whatever. I mean, was there anything that you were opened up your eyes?
So here, no, but here it was because in Cicero there was not much of these rules. There wasn't like you would call a black belt to row in no problem. Like never had this much of, I would say, old school stuff. And Unity was because we're all Cicero guys. We came here, and Murillo, he used to train Cicero and Barbosa, so he was kind of mixed. So the training was about the same way. I would say a lot harder, but the culture was similar because Murillo, he lived in São Paulo, so culture was in the gym. It was the same, just the outside of the people that would train with us that would have like a difference in culture.
I talked to Fabio Canella from Unity also just like 2 weeks ago, and one thing I talked about with him was like traditions in jiu-jitsu that we've kind of kept on and held on in, and how some people view certain things within jiu-jitsu more important than others. As you like have experienced jiu-jitsu and like you get a little bit older, is there anything in jiu-jitsu like cultural or traditional wise that you're like, I like this, we should probably keep this?
I like the stripes, like especially for beginners. Now that I work with beginners a lot, the stripes is a big milestones for the beginners. You know, it's a way for them to keep a roadmap. Like stripes in my like Unity, we don't do stripes, but I think stripe is a great way to do it. I always, myself, every time I get in and out of the mats, I bow out, bow in. That's something that keeps in mind, okay, I'm in my spot, I'm in the temple, right? Like a bow in, a bow out. There's something that I always keep and myself. What else? There's a few other stuff, like just to make sure, like I always like to keep, especially for my students, that to make sure that whenever they step on the mat, that is like a temple, right? They're there to do the best for themselves and the best for the partners, right? So keep the respect, don't curse like on the mats and all of that. So it's something that I always make sure my students stay in track of it.
You have a pretty successful, speaking of competition, you have a pretty successful competition. You won black belt no-gi worlds, right, in 2021. You podiumed multiple times at worlds as a black belt and other belts. But now you're focusing more on your coaching. What has been the mindset shift from coming from, compete to now you're trying to pass on that knowledge and that experience to, like you just mentioned, your students?
Yeah. So I had a successful career in competing. I'm still very young. I can't get back to compete at any time. I'm only 26. But what makes me more interesting is like learn how to communicate with people. And what made me very interesting is I will always been from the competitive side, even if I would coach someone to compete, to perform and all of that. So I learned a lot about the performance, right? And that, especially in my black belt years, I learned a lot about performance. But what makes me more interesting about coaching is like, how can I get someone that doesn't even know anything about jiu-jitsu and bring them in and help them change their lives through jiu-jitsu? Because once they step in, they're like, oh, I'm just going to do a martial arts and maybe I just want to lose some weight. But at the long run, that's not the only thing. You learn the principles of the martial art, the discipline and all of that, and they start applying that on their life. And whatever they step on the mats, they go out there, they're happy, like it's a way for me myself of when I coach and I make a student that they're having a bad day, they step in on the mats and they go out there, they're glad that they have coming into class. That is my whole goal on that. So I use jiu-jitsu as a tool to make people's life better.
Yeah, and I definitely think that when you have a good experience and a good background in jiu-jitsu, like it does translate over into coaching. I always say, world-class athletes don't make world-class coaches. You know what I mean? I definitely think they're two
Yeah.
totally different skills, right? You could be an amazing practitioner, but you can't talk your way out of a wet paper bag. You know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
communication skill has to be there. So how do you, as a a heavy competitor, now focusing once again on the coaching side, how have you been improving your coaching skill outside of the mats?
So one of the big things is on the mats, but like teaching as much as you can and everything. Like every time I have a chance to teach something, I will go and teach something, and that has helped a lot. But outside, I try to keep reading books and trying to understand the human behaviors and understand more the communication side of it. How can you communicate something, right? You can teach. How can you improve your teaching? I study. I watch a lot of podcasts. Right now I'm studying more the financial aspect of it, like how to acquire more students and all of that, which is an important rule in any business, and even jiu-jitsu gym needs to have people there. So it's not only the aspect, I'm not only studying the aspect of how to teach, but also how to keep the people engaged and how to may improve that experience. I would say that customer service experience. So I'm studying all the aspect of it. I'm just, when I realized that when I said, like, okay, I want to switch up from performance in like, fighting and all of that. I want to coach. I just opened my eye and was like, oh my God, I don't know anything. Like,
yeah. It's like all
like,
new again, right?
yeah, I was like, I used to think that I was good, but I realized that I'm not as good as I thought I was. And I was like, oh my God, I have to learn so much. I'm so many years behind. I don't watch jiu-jitsu at all. Like people would make like fun of me, like, oh, you don't watch, you don't even know. Like, I didn't know what's going on in the jiu-jitsu community. I train, I look it up. Who's the best guy in the bracket? Okay, I'm gonna go to beat him up. Like, I don't care how I'm gonna do it. I know how to pull guard, to pass guard, how to take down. I don't care what he does. I'm just gonna go there and fight, do my best. But now I definitely study jiu-jitsu a lot more. Not only the aspect of techniques, how you do this, that, and a third, more on like how people teach, how they communicate, right? And I started realizing there's like insights that I'm having that, like the other day, it's in jiu-jitsu there's a lot of different narratives to teach someone, right?
Yeah.
Like you can, the technical aspect of movement, you can teach the movement to the person. You just say, oh, step your foot here, the hand there, boom, it does the movement. There's the narrative of okay, you hear what is the principles of the technique, right? It doesn't matter what movements you use, but what's the principle? Let's say in a guard pass, you pin the guy's hip, and then eventually you pass the legs and you pin the shoulders. Okay, so that's the principles, right? How you do that, it eventually doesn't matter much, right? As long as you do that. And there's the mindset behind, well, what is the game I'm playing, right? How do I position myself? What is the mindset I'm having to accomplish that technique? So those are things insights that I had. I was like, okay, so I have 3 different ways to teach them. How I'm going to apply these 3 different ways, how I'm going to apply this in my teaching and my coaching, to when should I teach them the move, should I teach the mindset, and when should I teach the principles, right? So the things that it made me, and now I'm studying, going deeper into it to having a better understanding of it.
What do you feel like was the number one book or piece of content or self-help thing or whatever you've consumed that has helped you the most so far as you've began this like deeper dive into your coaching journey?
I remember the first book that I have read about it was the mindset. It was a book that actually made me realize, the mindset. You have the growth mindset and the scarcity mindset. So I was like, oh, okay, so I have to put these things around. And that also helped me to visualize even my, it was in the beginning of my black belt career when I started reading about that. That was a great book. Which other book? The other day I just finished the Think and Grow Rich, which is, it's not only the mindset, like financially, it's more like, oh, you want to, whatever you have a goal, it's a business, it is a career. Like you have to build a statement and you have to truly vision it, see it before you even achieve it. So those are two books that I have in mind right now. I have read a few this years already, and those are great books that I have in mind. Coaching wise, I don't have anything specific just for coaching. I do watch a lot of YouTube or podcasts that help me with the coaching, but reading about straight from coaching, I haven't done yet.
You mentioned in a Instagram post that 5 tips to get good at jiu-jitsu, and one of them was having a mentor. And I completely agree with you. I think having a mentor, whether it's your practitioner or your coach or professor, or just someone that's been doing jiu-jitsu a little bit longer than you, I think having a mentor is a great. Who has been the biggest mentor in your career?
I had at first like one of the biggest mentor, I would say, in my aspect of jiu-jitsu and all of that. He was Murilo Santana. I had in the jiu-jitsu aspect, it was Murilo, but early in the beginning, it was my coach Rafael Godoy. He was the guy that like I said, he was like a father figure for me, but he was like a great mentor. He was the guy that always make sure. He was always, even though I didn't do well in school, but he was like, hey, make sure you do well in school. Like, he always taught me one thing that at the beginning I was like, I knew it, but I didn't understand much. That he always told me, hey, look, you can be the best guy in the world. You can be the 10 times world champion. But when you injure your knee, shoulder, something like that, you won't be able to do this for as long. And you're going to have a second way. And what are you going to do next, right? And at the beginning, I was, even for myself, I was like, I don't want to coach. Like, this is not for me. But he always made me think of the future, right? Oh, okay, I'm going to compete for how long? For how long I'm going to do this? And what is going to be my next step? So he always made me think about that even though he pushed me to compete and he was like, look, you have a great future. You're great on what you do, but always think on the future. And he always incentivized me to, okay, go. There's someone else doing it in United States and Russia, wherever it is. If there's someone good, go learn from that person. And
why not continue to compete and then also grow as a coach? Do you feel like it's either or if you're trying to do both at a high level, do you feel like it takes away from one another?
So no, it depends. Definitely it will consume a lot of your energy, right? But I just stopped competing because I kind of got burned out of it a little bit. I was doing for too long. I was like, I might take a break. And in New York City, it's kind of hard to leave, so you got to keep it up. So I was like, okay, I started teaching a lot and like doing one-on-ones, and I was like, I'm going to take a break. We'll look for more to the financial aspect of it. Like I'm going to save it up a little bit and see what I can do, because compete is very expensive.
I bet.
Especially when I was competing, like at least once a month, you have to compete. And it's like live paycheck to paycheck. It's not the best option for the future. So I was like, look, I'm going to build up, my financial aspect. And it was one of the biggest reasons that I've stopped. It was like financially, it wasn't make sense for me, even though like you have a few sponsors, but to live a lifestyle of a fighter, especially in New York City, it's very hard. So I was just like, I'm going to focus on my coaching. And I was like, I had a knee injury. I had my body from doing lower back, elbows, and shoulders. Like it was in bad condition. I was like, I need to stop for a bit. And it has been like I would say 2 years that I don't compete consistently. I did in 2022. I won pans, like I close out pans, no gi, and I did a few other tournaments. I think 2022 ADCC Open, if I'm not mistaken, I won that, but I haven't been competing as much.
Real quick, let's talk about the importance of salt and electrolytes for a BJJ practitioner. And that's where today's sponsor, Salt Electrolytes, come in. Save 15% off your purchase at saltelectrolytes.com with code ElbowsTight15 at checkout. Once again, that's 15% off at saltelectrolytes.com with code ElbowsTight15 at checkout. Or use the link down below. Now, Salt Electrolytes drink mix is designed for today's warriors, athletes, and those who like to get after it and regularly get sweaty. Whether you're a heavy sweater that we've all seen on Instagram that needs a wet floor sign right next to them whenever they roll, or you're like a normal human being like me who barely sweats at all. With a light, refreshing flavor, salt is great to drink during your workout because it will not coat your mouth that thick, nasty film that some electrolytes drinks out there do. It has the perfect saltiness that's as easily to make you want to drink more, making rehydration a breeze. And salt keeps it simple, guys. There's only 6 different electrolytes with a touch of iodine to help maintain a healthy thyroid. There's no sugars, there's no colors, and there's no BS. So go earn your salt, guys and gals. And save 15% off your checkout at saltelectrolytes.com with code ElbowsTight15 at checkout. That's saltelectrolytes.com with code ElbowsTight15 at checkout to save 15% off. Because your electrolyte drink should work just as hard as you do. Thanks, guys. Go check them out. Well, one thing that I noticed and have read online is like when you were a heavy competitor, your guard retention was phenomenal on a lot of aspects, and you play a lot of lasso and spider and whatnot. When you're now coaching people, I have terrible guard retention, right? I don't know what it is. I feel like I'm a beetle on my back. You know what I mean? Like super easy for people to pass my guard. Now that you're coaching, where can you see people improve their guard retention the most, and how do you coach them to? Real quick, I notice the biggest thing for me is people don't use their feet and their legs efficiently, right? When a lot of times I'll just grab legs and I'll just move them out the way. You know what I mean? I'm like, all right, well, that was easy. And I know that's my fault too. Like that's one of my faults too. How do you, as someone with like world-class guard retention, how do you break it down to where a newer practitioner can start building some of those skills?
So I'm actually working on it. Like in the classes, I am trying to build my instructional for guard retention, because someone asked me online. It was like, hey, I see that you're great. You have great guard retention, but you don't have an instructional base on it. I was like, that's true, right? I shouldn't make it. I mean, it's something so natural for me that I don't see, I'm the best. Like, let's say I'm the best. My best is guard retention. Like, I haven't seen that way. I'm just, I know jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
But it's when you start talking about guard retention, is the first thing I do is we have to know what is guard retention and what is guard recovery, right? Retention is the small details playing guard, where you position your feet, right? Your feet, we have four frames, 2 with the legs, 2 with the arms. 2s are long distance, short distance, right? When we're short distance, that means we're in trouble, even with the legs. As soon as the guy passes your feet are your frames. If the guy passes your feet, you're going to have to frame with your shins, right? With the knees. So there, the guy's closer and closer to get to your chest. So you have to be aware of that. So every time the guard retention is like making sure, like me, myself, I play a lot open guard. So I'm always going to make sure my foot is stepping on the biceps. It doesn't matter what happened, my foot going to go back to the biceps. It doesn't matter. The guy go to knee on belly, I'm going to reset my guard, my feet wouldn't be on the biceps. Because when we play open guard, if you're not doing like De La Riva style, you don't have control of the legs, you're going to have full control of the upper body. So your foot has to either go to the hip or either go to the biceps. And a big player on the guard retention in general is your head movement. Sometimes your head has to go all the way underneath the guy.
Oh, yeah.
Example, inversion, right? If the guy's getting too close to you, he's passing your guard. Sometimes it's easier to spin, right? Go upside down and go underneath the guy. Hide your head from the guy, because if he can control your head, like the head and shoulder, he can stabilize the pass, right? So that's the big rule. So knowing when to invert and when to not. And if you don't know how to invert, first you need to learn how to invert, right? So that's a big rule. And if you don't know how to invert, very rarely you're going to have a good guard and good guard retention, because that's necessary. It doesn't matter that you have to be like me, you know, go upside down, invert, get your leg everywhere. It's just have an idea. Okay, the guy bullfighter you, I block him, but when is my time to try to go? I can explain it here, but when is, I don't know if you're getting me, but when the guy bullfighter you, you block his arm, right?
Mm-hmm.
The close arm. And then he's stepping closer to you. Sometimes it's just easier to hide your head right underneath his legs. You're going to have to reset the whole thing to get the guard pass. So those small things makes a huge difference.
Yeah, we saw at CJI, Levi Levy Jones.
Yeah.
Incredible guard retention. I mean, that was like the biggest thing. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing that a lot of people talk about too is Levi didn't get enough credit for his guard passing. Like, he has phenomenal guard passing as well,
Yeah,
just along with his guard retention. When you see someone like that and you hear the criticism of like, oh my gosh, all he's doing is just playing open guard, all he's just doing is playing open guard. How do you balance, you know, especially with like when you have people that want to compete and stuff like that? How do you balance of like keeping the guard and then pressuring forward and trying to progress in the competition or whatever?
So I am the more like, I would say that the guy that plays guard and it's there in the guard retention, like Levi. Levi, it's a great competitor. He has one of the best guard retentions, right? The best guards that I ever seen, and the guy I trained with. And it's that when the guard player plays like that, is like he's more opening to counter attack. So if the top guy doesn't attack, there won't be much.
Right.
Even myself, when I'm on the bottom, I like to counter attack. I do attack a lot, but because my leg attack game, like I say in the no-gi aspect, it's not as good. I just don't have much interest in leg attacks. So I like to more like arm drag, get up, like wrestle up. So I need the top person has to attack more. And because of flexibility, mobility, so I'm a lot more comfortable in the guy pressuring me in, that I can catch the guy instead of me attacking all the time, right? So I would say it's a type of fighter. Some people, they're more aggressive with the attacks. Some people are more like on the counter side. And it's just, I would say, preference.
So when it comes to coaching your classes, how does a typical class go? Are you doing a warm-up, 30, 45 minutes of technique, positional, open mat? Like, how do you do it to balance or to get the most benefit for your students?
So the way I do my class is like I do about 10 to sometimes 15 minutes with warm-up. Basically 5 minutes, it's basically we run, we move, we bear walk, some basic movements. And then I go to what I call it like a warm-up, but it's a skill develop warm-up. Like when we do hipscape, like shrimping, roll over the shoulder, like very small, so we can start moving the neck, shoulder, the lower back. And then I do sometimes like bullfighter drills. It's still warm up, but it's more like educational, right? They do short movements like bullfighter, boom, boom. They do the shin flip. We do like the monkey, I don't know how they call it, the gorilla jump. Like, you know, guy has knee down, you jump around, like back and forth. Some educational with the warm-up to prepare them for the technique. If it's a guard pass, they would do like bullfighter educational warm-up. And then we go over the technique. We do techniques from average from 15 to 20, sometimes 25 minutes, in that range. I like to keep the techniques short sometimes. I would say like 3 or 4 minutes each, back and forth, but we do by repetitions. So I explain the technique in like 3 to 4 minutes, and then they drill that each for like about 10 minutes. And then I go to the next one. I don't show more than 3 techniques unless they are beginners. So then I do like combo, like I do a whole sequence of techniques, but in specific, I teach 2 to 3 techniques. And then we go, sometimes we either do just situation. Let's say if that, like the topic of today, we're doing like turtle from top, turtle position, getting to the back. So we did whole situation from turtle to get to the back, and then we did crucifix, and from crucifix we did the whole 2 hooks in, and only situational rounds. What I learned during this, I would say this whole year that I have 2 years, but 1 year that I have to be, I am head coach of a program, is that situation helps. It's a lot better for the beginners. Like no doubt about it. Like I don't think even before blue belt should be rolling that much. Okay, obviously it's great. It's good to roll and try it out, the whole all the skills together and see how they're gonna look like, especially if you want to compete. But situations are a lot safer, less risk of injuries, and you get a lot more repetitions in one specific thing, right? So when you get to the back, let's say we work from the back. If you have a lot of times on back control or back attacks, the chance of you during the round get to that position and get the finish, it's a lot higher. And it's something that I haven't done in my professional career a lot. I did a lot, but I don't think I did enough. I spend a lot more time rolling. There would be sessions that we would do 13. I remember one flow went to Old Unity. We did 13 rounds of 10 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
After drilling for a little bit. So obviously it was competition rounds. We were training to get ready for competition, but I still think that we did a lot rounds and I could have expanded doing more situational. If I go back to compete, I would definitely focus a lot more in situationals than rounds.
Yeah, there's a big push, and I haven't talked about it for a while, but like the ecological dynamics in jiu-jitsu right now, you know, the Greg Souders and all the guys from the East Coast that are talking about, like, it's pretty much all situational, right? In their training. And Greg talks about, you know, it's kind of like hyperbolic, but he teaches technique, but he also says like there's no such thing as like technique. It's all about, you know, body awareness and whatnot. And that's something interesting hearing, you know, you talk about, you know, doing a lot more live rounds, a lot more situational sparring, because that's something that we've added into our academy more too. It's like, we'll same thing, you know, 3-4 techniques, 4 probably max, you know what I mean? And the fourth one is usually something that no one's ever going to get, really. It's just kind of like something flashy to kind of like end the class on a fun note. And then we go into situational and we'll do, you know, a couple rounds of short situational rounds, you know, 2-3 minutes in this position, not going, you know, 10 minutes or 5-minute full rounds of this one position. Because like you mentioned, I've noticed when I do a lot more situational and when new practitioners do a lot more situational, you, like you mentioned, you get those reps in that position. When I was getting ready for a competition, I was like, everyone's starting my back. I need to work on my back escapes. I need to work on my, you know, defenses from back submissions and stuff like that. And I just kept putting myself in that. And then by the end of the week, I was like, wow, it's only been 1 week and I feel like a whole new person. You know what I mean? So when you're coaching these new practitioners and then you say, hey, we're going to do situational rounds, a lot of people can be intimidated because they're going to get exposed, air quotes, that because they're not good in that position. And it's like, look, that's exactly why we're doing it. It's because you're not good in it. Like, how do you coach them through it, saying, you know, prepping them for it? Like, don't get frustrated. I know it can be frustrating. Don't get frustrated.
So what I do is, first I give one round of situation. Most of the times is I don't start full power. So what I do, look guys, let's do 50% of resistance. Okay. Just to get the feeling of how it's going to look like. And then they start kind of like a warm up for the situation. Is they do 50%, they move around, see how they're going to look like. And then we eventually add the full power. Okay. Sometimes we don't even, if they're going to have rounds after, we do 50% just to get good feedback. And then they do rounds and they try it out. Right. That way it's safer on the start. They don't start, let's say you're doing for the back, you know, you can crack your neck right away. So they kind of warm up a little bit. That's how I see it. And sometimes if if they're working from that situation, let's say we're doing backscape, right? If they're doing that is the technique of the day, so they're already used. So they practice a little bit so they feel more confident. I always try to do the situation rounds based on the technique that we have to work.
So how does it change for when a student comes to you and say, "Hey, I want to compete," and uh, and you're like, "Okay, well, this is what we need to do and whatnot." And does that change depending on the competition? Like, say if they come to you and they're like, "Hey, I just want to do like a local grappling industry," or if
Mm-hmm.
someone's like, "Hey, I want to do a IBJJF Open in upstate," you know what I mean? Like, how does it
Yeah.
change when a student comes to you wanting to compete?
So we I take a few different approaches, right? Right now, where I'm at, we don't have competitors like I would say at all. Okay, most of beginners they're not really interested in compete. But even when someone like I remember this year in May, we did a tournament where one or two guys came in, oh, I want to compete, and then I kind of pushed like other 10 guys to compete. I was like, hey guys, it's a I do support competitions. It's a great way to learn more about the sport and to test yourself and to improve in an exponential way. Like going and actually going near 100% and having that feeling, that fear and the anxiety before the match and all of that, that definitely makes you more aware when you go back to the gym and you're like, oh, at the tournament, this happened. The guy took my back and I didn't know how to deal with this situation. So you become aware of your game a little bit. And when someone tell me, you want to compete, I'm gonna tell some other few people to try to compete with this person. If let's say one person come up at me, I would try to push two other three guys to join him to have training partners, right? In my case, I cannot have much competitors, not at all. So I would at least make a group of people that wants to compete, and I would prepare them in a different way. I would be a little tougher on the rounds. Let's say I would make them their level of stress level. I would push it up so they can be able to hold the stress level in the competition. So I would start the warm up a little harder. I would do more specific training, and I would implement more takedowns because we most of the times we start on the ground. So we implement more takedowns, and basically I would just try to increase their level of stress. And if they have time, I would definitely tell them, hey, look, you need to drill on the side, but on your own. You need to figure out what works for you, because sometimes I can tell them, hey, look, do this technique this way, right? But I do one way. I have a different body type, right? So I just want them to get three techniques, get really good at three submissions, three sweeps, three guard pass, three takedowns. You're good. You can win any match. You just need to create the final for those three techniques.
Yeah, I was going to say your body must be kind of like built for jujitsu now, starting at such a
Yeah.
young age. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, because I know when I see people that that start so young, and like I'm like, you're molded to it now, dude. Like, there's got to be some realistic expectations of when I watch someone like yourself, and I'm like, oh man, they're so good at this, and like, how can I get that good? It's like, well, I haven't been training since I was 11 years old for 15 years. You know what I mean? Like, so I got to
Yeah.
have realistic expectations. How do you set those for your students when they come and train? And you're like, have you ever had to like give them someone like a reality check, or are you always like very open and supportive of whatever their goals are?
No, I'm trying to keep very like in their reality. Like I, if someone comes to me and trying to compete, like I'm gonna support them always, but not, let's say someone 28 years old and they're like a white belt and they come to me and say, oh, I want to be a black belt world champion. I'm gonna be like, I'm sorry, that's not gonna happen. Like unless you're like you you can, it can happen, but the chances of this happening, it's very low. Like you don't see anyone above 35 winning world champion anymore. Like you don't see that. But I keep them very, if they want to compete, I'm gonna be realistic to them, and I'm gonna say, oh, this is what you can. It's not that it's impossible to do the other stuff, but more realistic for you accomplish this, that, and a third, right? So I try to be very realistic.
What is your biggest accomplishment that in your jiu-jitsu journey that you feel like has helped you the most as you started your coaching journey?
I would say compete in general helped me because I got to experience so many people from different jiu-jitsu style, right? So even because I train in like 3 different gyms that I train myself, like that I was there doing like camps. But the competition of travel, go somewhere, like go to Abu Dhabi, go to California, go to Florida, and have to train with those people for a little bit and compete against these people made me open my eye, obviously, of like, oh, there's so many different ways I can take my approach to it, like my game, that have helped me. As like when I see a student, I go like, oh, this guy, this is his, let's say, I'm going to compare Bernardo. The guy a lot bigger, a little heavier, half guard. Bernardo Faria style. If the guy is a little longer and big hands, long legs, maybe Romulo Barra style. Like, you know, you do some spider guard. And that gives me a better understanding and makes easier for the guy, right? If they walk in, I can guide them all. For you, this works best. Like I see someone bigger and brolic and going like, oh, maybe you should do like cyborg style, you know, like it improves and makes it a lot easier for them. I'm not gonna, let's say someone 300 pounds, come to the gym, bigger guy, I'm gonna teach him a bit of ball. Like, no, I'm not gonna waste my time teaching him that. Like he's not gonna use that as much. So it's just gonna be a waste of time.
Yeah, that's a definitely interesting perspective of being able to like see body styles and body types, personality differences and whatnot. And then I'm sure age comes in there, like, and then, you know, athletic background, like you mentioned, like your soccer helped you out quite a bit. How do you assess these people from day one? Are you doing it like the second they walk in and they start moving in? Do you see people that have like an athletic background without ever even asking? Because I know as someone that coached like weightlifting or CrossFit years ago, if someone came in and I was like, oh, that guy has an athletic background. Like you could just tell, like they know the body awareness. Is that something that you pay attention to as well? Obviously,
definitely. I do work as a personal training too. I have a good coach, Santiago McCartney and TJ, and because I learned all of the like coaching aspect of the physics throughout my career. I have a bad lower back pains, and I had to get really deep into my preparation before competitions, that I had to make sure my body was 150%, and then learn a lot about it. And then I start implementing into the classes. My warm up is based on plyos, like trumps and basic body movements. And like, I need to make sure, if you're in my class, I need to make sure I prepare you to do everything you're going to be doing throughout the round or throughout the technique, right? So you need to have all those, I would say, mobilities and movements, right? So all my warm up is preparation. Even let's say you just joined. Let's say you go now at the gym and you want to do a trial class. So what are you going to do? You're going to sign up. You're going to have 2 sessions. Most of the times this session would be one-on-one with me. And then I'm going to first prepare you. And if you haven't fight before, done anything before, I'm going to teach you the principles of fight in the self-defense aspect of it, make you understand what is fighting, what is controlling someone on the ground, what is being on the ground, because most of the times someone walk on the gym, they don't lay down on the ground at all. So they have to be comfortable with that. I will prepare you. And then the warm up on my session is always, it doesn't matter who it is if it's a black belt or not, they're always preparing themselves to do all those twisting movements and those rotations around and pushing and explosions.
That's so interesting that you bring up the self-defense side, because I feel like there's such a dichotomy between jiu-jitsu, maybe not so much nowadays, but I feel like there's a little bit of a resurgence coming up of it, of like self-defense jiu-jitsu versus sport jiu-jitsu. As someone that's, heavy sport jiu-jitsu background, how important do you feel that the self-defense outside of just the first two classes of jiu-jitsu is?
I think it's very, very important because the self-defense aspect build the student's confidence outside. Right? I have come where I haven't had that background at all, and I just started studying about the self-defense and the Guaresi Jiu-Jitsu in these days now that I've been a black belt for a few years already, and I haven't paid attention to that. But that actually is a big, big role in Jiu-Jitsu. In my opinion, it's a great way to even bring people into Jiu-Jitsu, right? The Jiu-Jitsu sport aspect of it can be very complicated. And sometimes even I have seen I have teach people oh, you learn the bullfighter, you get to the side, do Americana, and you start playing that game from there, which is cool. Not for everyone though. Right. Not everyone has the ability of getting that right away and start. So the self-defense is I would say, a more structured way of a roadmap for them to learn all the principles and get all the movements to start actually doing the jiu-jitsu sport. I think I use a methodology where until you have 2 degrees, you shouldn't be rolling. You should focus more on doing sequence training. You just go over and over a few techniques based on self-defense, but grappling self-defense, not self-defense just throwing punches and kick. No, none of that. The based on the jiu-jitsu self-defense is someone punch you. How are you gonna block? How are you gonna control that person? Take them to the ground and mount. The whole point is every time you want to either end up in a mount position or behind the person. There's no just hang out on side control or
let's play half.
Yeah.
So
that's
So you mentioned that one of your goals is possibly competing in mixed martial arts. Do you feel like that your interest in the self-defense jiu-jitsu is partly because you were talking about possibly going into mixed martial arts?
I trained for I would say a year and a half MMA. I trained Muay Thai, and then I went more to boxing, and then I did the whole MMA for 6 months. I was looking for a fight and all of that, and that's what might be. Once I stopped jiu-jitsu, I was I'm gonna do MMA. I want to do at least 1 fight, 2 fights to see how that feels like. And then I was training 3 times a day, and doing the whole camp, and I was looking for a fight, and then I kind of got boring. I was this is the same thing as jiu-jitsu. I'm just training. I was I'm going to give a break of competing of anything. I just want a break. And then that idea of MMA got out of my mind. I was no. Right now I'm more focused on the business and creating my own jiu-jitsu studio.
Yeah, I don't know how people go from, jiu-jitsu and not getting punched in the face to wanting to go get punched in the face. I'm I'm good, man. I'm a dad. I'm middle-aged, or I'm not middle-aged. I'm 35, almost 35, 3 kids. I was zero desire to get punched in the face for fun.
Well, I'm definitely going to say it is something in you that you have to have something in you to go get punched in the face. It's tough. If you're training professionally, I did that 6 months where I had a diet, I was training I never trained even for jiu-jitsu. I had a nutrition coach. I had the personal training for the lifting, and I was doing the MMA. I was training with Rich, and he was tough, man. He was tough, getting punched in the face, and I cut my eye a few times. I was damn, why am I doing this? But he was really nice for me, especially because I got to improve my striking. I got my kicks better. And even for me, I was I need this because one day, maybe not today, but maybe 10 years ahead, I'm going to have a student that wants to do MMA, and how it's going to be the best approach for me to help that guy out with his grappling part of it, right? I learned a lot of the grappling aspect. I had to improve my wrestling. I had to switch my grappling style to MMA style. So I look more into how can I benefit myself from the experience of learning something new and improving what I already know to this sport.
Yeah, and I mean, you've seen it in multiple, Instagram clips on social media and whatnot of people getting upset in the middle of jiu-jitsu matches and starting throwing punches. It literally just happened like 2 weeks ago. A guy got upset about bending his fingers and threw a Muay Thai kick at the guy's ribs. He's like, "What are you
happened
doing?"
with me.
Yeah,
I got punched.
You got punched?
Yeah. The ADCC Open thing. Well, the first ADCC Open Las Vegas. Yeah.
What happened?
Like, I don't know. The guy, like, I don't remember the guy's name, but the guy started losing he was talking mad shit throughout the whole match. He was talking a bunch of things, and I was just super tired. I just want to win. And the guy's talking, trash talking throughout the match. And he's kind of started losing his mind. Like, he was too emotional about it. And he saw that he was not going to win the match. So he was just trying to either piss me off and make me do something stupid where we both would be disqualified, or he was just literally find a way to end the match there and not lose, I would say. And we were exchanging collar tie on the overtime. And I was just doing collar ties on him. He wasn't really hard. I didn't smack him in the face or anything. And I was doing collar tie, and he tried to smack me in the face. I kind of I ducked a little bit, but he still got in my face. And I was just like, oh, this guy's crazy. He lost his mind. But I was waiting for the referee to intervene us, like to stop. But the referee didn't do anything. I just looked at the guy. I was like, what do you want? Like, you want to do an MMA match? And the guy just punched me.
Oh my gosh.
He punched me, and then I punched him back, and we started fighting. And then like a bunch of people got in, and that's the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, jiu-jitsu can get very heated, especially in like a high stress situation like we do all the time. How do you coming from an experience like that? What do you tell your students how do they stay calm when things start getting super stressful? They feel like they're losing, they're getting upset. Because I know I've been in the middle of roles before where I'm not losing my cool on the person, but I'm just getting frustrated that like I'm getting my butt kicked super bad. And it's not even their fault that I'm feeling this way. It's more of like an internal way. And I just have to like snap myself out of it. Like, hey, this is the training room. Hey, this is a local competition. Hey, there's no reason to get super upset. How do you train your students to stay level headed so they're not having MMA matches in the middle of the class?
Yeah. So I am a very calm guy. Like I am super, like I had never had problems with like me being like with such like aggression level where I want to, beat someone up. But I always tell my students, like have fun, man. Like, the best way for you to learn is have fun. Don't take it serious. If you're having a bad day, sometimes the best option is just to stop, look around, try to be calm. Especially at the gym, like in a fight, I understand you fighting against each other, even though you have a beef with someone, it can get hot. But I always have in my mind, this is just a jiu-jitsu match. Like there's nothing that's gonna go above this. It's just a jiu-jitsu match. Even though whatever happens, it's not gonna go beyond this.
Yeah, and that can definitely keep you level headed because I don't even like calling jiu-jitsu matches fights. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because that kind of already puts that in your mindset.
A fight is a real fight. You're on the street, you're fighting, right? It's MMA. It's a fight. It's a jiu-jitsu match. Like you guys are. I always call it the human chess. Jiu-jitsu is the human chess. There's nothing else. Like it's a game where you have especially in IBJJF, you have a set rules, and you're trying to either win by points or either win by a checkmate, which is the submission, and that's it. That's all about.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Well, hey, Jeferson, I want to say thank you, man, for coming on the show today. This was a super fun conversation. The hour flew by. I can't even, I looked down, like, oh, man. But I like to end the conversation with the same question every single time. If you could give one piece of advice to a brand new white belt, what would it be?
My advice for the beginner white belt, stay consistent. Don't set big goals for yourself. Set small goals. I would say if you just walking on the mats today and you have a goal of training, set yourself up to train 3 times a week, have fun, enjoy the journey, and eventually set yourself up to get a blue belt and all of that. Stay very realistic with your journey and stay consistent. Consistent is the key, because I see a lot, like some people, they start training, they train 4-5 times a week, and then 3 months later, they don't show up at all. So make sure, sometimes even 2 times a week. Stay consistent for 2 years, 2 times a week. You're going to see the progress in your life. It's going to be tremendous. It's going to be exponential.
Yeah, that's probably, I always say that's like probably one of my biggest weaknesses is consistency. I'll go two times a week for 2-3 months, and then I'm like once a week, I'll skip a week. You know what I mean? Consistency is like the hardest part for me. Yeah. But when you do hit it consistently, there's no denying that you feel better, you move better, and stuff like that. So, but hey, Jeferson, if people want to follow you, where can they find you at and check out all your stuff?
They can check out my Instagram, j.guaresi, Guaresi. And you can also follow Sintonia Jiu Jitsu, my YouTube channel. I just started. I have been posting a few techniques there. Later on, I will be posting a lot more content for everyone. Especially, I'm working on my guard retention video. I'm going to be posting soon. You guys go and check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Jeferson, so much once again for coming on the show today.
Travis. Appreciate for the opportunity.
Hey, no problem at all, man. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching at home. Be sure to go check out Jeferson. Everything's going to be linked down below. And remember, no oil checks here. Peace.
Take care. Thank you.